everybody. This is the first of what I'm hoping is going to be a pretty fun series. I really wanted to talk about some of the real basic fundamentals of web development, and kind of just work forward, and try to get you to a nice full stack understanding of a lot of stuff, but you can't get there unless you understand the fundamentals. So I wanted to start with really one of the most fundamental things of all, and I got this fun little graphic I think is going to be cool. But we're going to talk about map, filter, reduce today. These are three vanilla JavaScript functions actually, but you see them all the time in React, and if you understand this, you can really do a lot of stuff. So we're gonna just start here, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. So you can kind of get the gist from this little graphic, but these are all functions that you use really to map over, not map over, but you're going to use these with arrays mostly, and in JavaScript and really in React a lot of what you're doing is taking arrays of objects, whether you get it from an API or whatever, and you're just going to do stuff with that data, right? So these are kind of your bread and butter functions for what to do when you get that stuff. So we'll start with maps. I like map. I map all the time. But basically, you can kind of see it here. This isn't the syntax, but I do really like the way this is kind of explained, so you can look at this kind of part of the way they drew it as the callback function, and kind of looking at the emoji. Like really what map does is it takes these, and whatever your callback function is, it's just going to run it on like each and every one of them. So here it's cook, the cow turns into a hamburger, potato into french fry. I guess that's a yam. I don't know, you guys get the gist. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. All right, so to start, I got my basic little create React app up. I'm assuming you guys kind of understand that. I may do a video kind of talking through that, but this is kind of the foundational create React app here. So what I did was, I love soccer. I play a lot of FIFA, and PSG is my favorite soccer team. So I thought it would be fun, let me pull it in over here, to map over and really just work on all these functions. Our array of objects we're going to use today is players from PSG. Anybody who wants to, as the kid says, smoke on FIFA, I might drop the gamer tag in the comments or something. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so these are just players on the team. We got, they're all objects, just various properties in the object, first name, last name, position, height. And I just put goals, like we could say it's how many goals they scored last game. Who knows? But this is really kind of the data model we're going to be using. And what's important to note here is this is just like a very common style of data you're gonna just be dealing with like all the time when you web develop. Like you're really gonna take these objects and we'll talk later on, sometimes you might store like an object with a bunch of objects inside of it, but a lot of times too you're just gonna have an array, and it's just gonna be filled with all these objects that you're gonna map over or do whatever. So for starters, let's map over this array. So my idea here is maybe let's make something that's like a player card basically, right? So we'll take all this data and we'll make like a little card for each one of these guys. And to do that, we're going to use the map function. So again, I'm assuming you guys know a little bit about React. I may do a more introductory video eventually, but this is a component. We use something called JSX. Again, I'm assuming you guys kind of understand this stuff. I know we're doing the basics, but there are some fundamentals before these fundamentals. But basically, we're returning a div right now. Inside this div, I'm going to put these square brackets to denote we're doing some JSX right here, which is just a cool combination of JavaScript and HTML, so we can just do everything at once, So what we're going to do is we're going to take this player's array. We're going to run the method, which is called map. Now, what I like to do all the time in VS Code is to just look at what it tells me. So this is a function, it accepts 3 arguments, it calls the callback function one time for each element. You can look, here's kind of the idea there. It's showing kind of the data type we already have here. So the first thing you're going to do is declare what a single object in this array is called, or whatever we're iterating over, right? We need to say, okay, what are we going to call one of these, right? So we're going to say in our array of players that each one is a player. We're going to ES6 this. I'm a big arrow functions guy. I hope you guys have caught up to that. If not, I really recommend it. So yeah, so boom, we're already really far along here. We're mapping over right now. The way this function works, it's going to map over each one of these players. So what we're going to do from there is, this is like the first way to map. We're going to return some simple HTML right now. So let's get down here and make a div. Okay. And then inside this div, we're going to have an h1. And then now what we can do is each one of these objects is represented by this player variable we created. So I can just go in there and I can pull out player.firstname. Boom. And yeah, let's just do that, see what we get. Look at that. Boom. Killian, Lionel, Sergio. You know, again, if you guys don't like soccer, it's kind of your own fault, or football, as the rest of the world calls it. But just bear with me. You know, as you can see, we're just mapping over each object in this array and pulling out the first name, and then boom, there it is, right? So let's keep going and just finish out our player card, right? So player dot last name, and then let's use a h3 for the rest of this, and we'll do player dot position. And then we'll do another h3, and then I have something called Prettier. It's a great VS Code extension that just makes everything look nice. So I have it set to do it on save, so I know it looks a little crazy right now, but I'm gonna press save. It's gonna square everything up for me, and look at that. Boom, it's beautiful. We have our player cards, our information, just mapping over pretty simply. You know, that's how that goes. So from there, man, what we're gonna do, I'm sorry, people are just blowing me up right now. From here, that's basically the gist of map, you know. One thing we can do, and this is kind of unrelated to map, yeah, why not? Let's do it. Is make a new component. So we'll call this a player card. Syntax, you always want to do all caps for this. Not all caps, but you want to capitalize that first letter. We're going to do JSX. And then I have React snippets for VS Code. Big fan. This is another I may do a video just purely about VS Code extensions. But if you type in RFCE, you could just you could pause the video right here if you want. But yeah, if you type in RFCE, it'll give you basically just a template. So now I've made a player card component, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna come here and we're gonna take all this good stuff and we're gonna cut it and we're gonna put it inside of our player card like so. And then what we're going to do is destructure our player right there, because I'm going to pass it in. Boom. And then all you have to do in your function up here is to import our player card from, and just make sure you know where you saved it. I put it in the same directory, so I just do / player card. And then what we can do is now we can map our player card like so. Okay, so now for each player we're getting a player card, and then we're just gonna say that the player in our player card is equal to player. Boom, nothing changes. So now all we're doing is we're just coming over here and making a little player card. A little easier to see, a little easier to read. So that is kind of the start of map. One other thing I'll show you about map, which I think is also very useful, is sometimes you want to map conditionally. So I run into this a lot when I'm kind of developing. You're not always going to just map everything in here. So say, I don't know, we have different pages. let's say I want to just map the defenders. So Sergio Ramos, great defender. Let's say I only want defender cards, right? What I can do is, as you can see here in my map function in the callback, so after the arrow function, I'm just returning the JSX in parentheses, right? So the component is coming back inside these parentheses. I am going to get rid of the parentheses, and I'm going to replace them with square brackets. And what that is going to do is it's going to run this kind of like function, and that allows me to put kind of different if statements in here. So what I'll do is I'll say if, and then boom, I'm just pulling in this player value like before, or if player dot position, and what I say, we want to map to the defenders, right? So we'll say if the position is equal to defender, and you know, gotta get that together, then we can use our return statement, and then here come back the parentheses. We're going to pull that, put that right there, and when I save, it'll put my thing there, and then boom, look, now we are mapping conditionally, so we're only mapping if the player position is defender. So that's also very useful, something I end up doing a lot. You know, you're not always going to map everything in the array, so just something to think about, kind of useful. And that pretty much is map. You know, that's kind of the gist there. Pretty straightforward, to be honest with you. You know, the JSX can be a little tricky sometimes. I hope I didn't zone you guys out too much, kind of moving this into a component, but yeah, you know, that is the map function, and just yeah, that's kind of the gist there. So let's keep the party going. Move on to filter. So on to filter. So again, let's look at all of these are basically just using a callback function, and you know, the value of the callback function is just has different what's the word, tasks, I'll say. So like here, you know, this cook function is really just designed to take each one of these, and like in our case, right, we took players, and our function was a create a player card function, you know. So that's kind of that. With filter, it's a little different, because what you're really doing is going through and kind of conditionally saying, okay, your callback function, like here it's is vegetarian, is going to just see essentially if each value, because it checks each value whether or not it fits whatever criteria you give it. And so let's give that a shot. So I think a good example of that would be to try to show, what do we show, the defenders here. Let's try to show our forwards. Okay, so what we can do is we can come down here and we can say const forwards equals, and then we'll go to our whole list of players, right? And we're gonna filter. I hope you can now understand why it's called filter. Okay, boom. And what we're gonna do is, again, always good to just look, right? Callback function, it accepts up to 3 argument, calls the callback function one time for each element in the array, and it returns the element in the array that meets the condition. So really what we just want is a function that returns true or false. So again, with all these, you're gonna start with what each element in the array is called. So we have players, so we're going to take each player, and we're going to use an arrow function, and we're not going to do parentheses here. This one's actually pretty simple, or pretty straightforward. We're just going to say if player dot position triple equals forward, and then we're just going to close it. So all this is, these are booleans. It just evaluates true or false. Here's your function. And now what I can do is, let's just console log. I put forward because there's only one, it should be 4 words. We have more than one forward. Yeah, so let's just console log and see what we got. I have my console up down here. Let me move it over for you guys. But yeah, so if we come down here, excuse all these warnings, but if we look, and this is all based on, let me show it, this console log right here. So this is just the results of our filter function. And if you look, we have our 2 forwards right there. So that is how that works. And now, because we have this nice lovely player card, let me not do this, and let me map players.map, or no, I'm sorry. Let me do forwards.map, and now we have a forward. Oh, nope, we're gonna do parentheses, and then all we're doing is saying for each forward, we want to map to a player card with player equal to each individual forward. And I hope this also is a good illustration of why React is just so powerful. You know, you can make these cards, and then they're just so reusable, or these components, they're just so reusable, and that's always so beautiful. So let's see, right here, this is our only defender. If I save now, I should have 2 forwards. Boom. And there we go. You know, so that's filter. Pretty chill. You know, really not much to it, to be honest. I think the main thing for me to remember a lot is that I'm so used to putting brackets, because I just feel like it's a callback function. But just remember, like with filter, all we're ever trying to do is just we're saying what, as usual, we're delineating what a single member of this array is. So like each object, right, we're going to call that a player, and then from there we're just trying to come up with something that evaluates true or false. You know, if it was the height or the however many goals they scored, you know, something like that. So that's filter. We're just moving right on along here, onto reduce. I'll be honest, I don't really use reduce that much. This might be like a dirty little React secret. Maybe I just don't, but it is good to know, and everybody says you should know it, and it's really not that hard. So to illustrate reduce, I thought it would be pretty chill to just put how many goals they scored in the last thing. My fault, I should have explained the little photo. So basically, with reduce, all we're doing is, again, we're taking our function, but what it's going to do now is it's gonna basically sum all these together. Like in our example, we're going to sum all these together. You can multiply, you can do anything, but really what it's going to do is it's going to take each one of these and just keep, it's going to take this, run whatever your callback function is, boom, it's going to combine that, it's going to run your callback function, it's going to combine that. I know that could be a little confusing, but I really think this is a good way to kind of describe this. Like whereas map, you get 4 of these, you have 4, you end with 4. Filter, you know, you have 4, but you're filtering, you get down to 2. Reduce, you're only getting one thing at the end, you know. It's kind of nasty here, hopefully it isn't poop. But yeah, so to explain this one, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come down here, and now what we're gonna try to do is we're gonna try to add together all the goals that have been scored in the last game. So to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say players dot reduce. Okay, boom. Oh, my fault. We gotta put this in some brackets, otherwise it's gonna ask me like, what am I trying to do here? So if we look, it doesn't want to explain it. Whatever. All right. So what we're gonna do here, and this one is a little tricky, is we're going to get 2 values. Okay, here we go. So the function accepts 4 arguments. It calls a callback function 1 time for each element. The return value of the callback is accumulated and then is provided as an argument. So basically, if we go back to here, you know, the idea is that, like I was saying, we just keep going from 1 to 1. It gives you 2 values instead of 1, because you're getting what's called an accumulator, which is basically, like in our case, we're going to add, right? So say this is 1 and this is 2, right? We're going to put them together. That's going to make 3. That's what you call your accumulator. It's your accumulated value, and then it's just going to add to that whatever this next value is right here. And it takes another property as well, and that is going to be the start value that you start from. And that's really important in our case because we're doing something a little tricky here, because what we're doing is we're pulling out a specific value in here. So boom, like I said, we have our sum, which is just our accumulation, and our player, right, which is, again, all of these functions do the same thing. You get a player because it's just, what are we calling one single version of these? And then what we're going to do is we're going to say sum, not sum, sum plus player dot goals, right? Because that's all we're doing. We're just adding them together. and then we're gonna start at 0. So the first time you run the function, start at 0, and then after that, take the sum and just keep adding the player goals till there aren't any more, right? That is that, and then what we'll do is let's make a nice little H1 here that says the total goals are boom, and then let's see what we got. And this is a little small, so let me put that also in an H1 so you can read it, but it is right. And I'll put this here just so you can see it a little better. Boom. So the total goals are 5. We had 3 goals from Kylian, 2 goals from Messi, solid hat trick. He's the GOAT. And yeah, so now we have 5 goals. So, you know, reduce is kind of really tricky, but when you get used to it, it's really not that hard. You know, there's other examples where you might be multiplying, you might be summing. You know, if you got a, I don't know, say somebody has a cart maybe, and you wanna add all their stuff together to give them a total, right? Like, you know, that's where this will come in handy. You might be multiplying based on quantity. Like, you know, there's a bunch of different reasons, but the fundamentals are always the same here. You're gonna get a sum. You're gonna get an individual. What you have to name what each individual member of the array is. And then also just don't forget, give it this start value. Makes things a lot easier. Yeah, so, you know, I hope that was informational. Again, let me come back to a little photo here and just kind of go over this one more time. Just a little quick recap, but, you know, map, again, all you're doing is you're taking each individual object in the array and saying, hey, I want to map this to this, that, and the third. If you use square brackets, you can use a conditional statement inside of here to say I only wanted to map meat and not animals, you know, or veg. So I could put this kind of vegetarian thing inside my map function. That might lead you to ask why use filter. You're not always going to map everything you filter, if that makes sense. So sometimes you just want to filter an array and like evaluate it and use that to do something else. So it's good to know all of these. These are all kind of really important, but that's map. Filter, again, you know, you're using this callback to just delineate true or false. So I have that, I do have that up. So, you know, this Boolean right here, it just needs to evaluate true or false, and that'll return whatever is true, you know. And then reduce, again, we're taking each element and we're doing something with the accumulated value. So just remember with that, you know, you get an accumulator, and you have to name what an individual member of the array is. So yeah, that is the first video in the series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, if you did enjoy it, please click that like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Hope you enjoyed it.